I'm going to also hit record.
It is 5:02 p.m. This is the Bluff Town Council and Planning and Zoning public hearings. Today is October 28th, 2025. We'll start with the Town Council roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Brett Hornsby.
Jennifer Davila.
Ann Buckingham,
Erin Nelson serving as town manager.
then Planning and Zoning.
Marcia
Carrie.
Haydenfeld.
Leah Collins.
And Amanda Podmore, is she on?
I
And
don't
Brian
see her.
Whitney is not on.
Brian, I believe, is an excused absence. He had mentioned he probably couldn't be here as far as I know.
All right. Then we'll move forward with a reminder of rules, procedures, and a summary of public hearing topics. I'll turn that over to Erin Nelson.
Alrighty, so. Rules of procedure for the public hearing, what we'll do is, someone will motion to move into the public hearings. Since we have 7 in a row, we will stay in public hearing, they're all noticed separately, but we'll stay in, so we will not move in and out. We will take comment, so there'll be a brief presentation of each agenda or each topic. And then we'll open the floor to in-person comments and then virtual comments. Each speaker is allotted no more than 3 minutes to speak on each agenda topic or each public hearing topic area. We do have a designated timekeeper that's going to be Gary Hawes today. Comments should be directed to council, not to audience members. And you cannot give any of your remaining time to another individual. Of course, don't disturb the meeting. Written comments submitted by email have been distributed to council. They will not be read aloud tonight. Online attendees are not allowed to write their public comments into the chat box. They are just to indicate that they'd like to make a public comment. And it would be helpful for this meeting to please indicate which topic you are hoping to comment on. Please refrain from using your cell phones. We've got public sign-up sheets here in the room for each of the ordinances. As per usual, we will randomize that order, and then same for the online folks. When we get to each time for the online, we'll have them raise their hands, or they can put their comment or put their name into the chat box. But you can put your name into the chat box at any time for any of the topics. We'll just call upon you when we get to that meeting topic. So I know we already have one indicated that they'd like to make a comment during RVs. So that's perfect. Keep doing that. Already went through all this good stuff. We're not going to do the 1-minute warnings tonight because I think it threw people off. So we're going to do it's 3 minutes. And once the timekeeper says 3 minutes are up, we ask that you please refrain from going on. You can submit comments up until 5 p.m. on Friday, November 7th on any of these topics discussed tonight. And last but not least, please state your first and last name prior to speaking so we know who you are. Any questions regarding procedures?
We forgot to mention that since we're not closing each ordinance item, that they can only speak to the ordinance that we're discussing.
Correct, yes. So once we are finished with the topic, we're finished with the topic. So please break out your comments into each topic area. Thank you, Jen. Okay.
All right, letter A, amendments or dissolution of land use clearance ordinances.
Alrighty, so a brief overview on this topic. The purpose of potentially getting rid of this ordinance. So originally the land use clearance process was put in place because Bluff did not have a building department. Building department was San Juan County, and so San Juan County needed a way in which they were notified that the location plans for the building were meeting town zoning code. So they got this sign off process that said, yep, looks good for town wise, now on to you, building department. The land use clearance process has become duplicative now that we have a building department. Most of the questions that are asked on the, well, I should say all of the questions that are asked on the land use clearance application are also asked for a building permit. And so it's really utilizing time in both planning and zoning, plus the building department to have to do this doubly. In getting rid of this process, it would also reduce our fees to the public by $200. Because right now we're having them paid for both the land use clearance as well as the building permit. So with that, this is more of an administrative change. But if someone felt very strongly that we need multiple sets of eyes, but really this is more administrative. The big change is the reduction in fees, reducing it by $200. So pretty straightforward. The land use clearance process ordinance is up under ordinances on our town website. So you're welcome to go look at that. Again, was formed originally since we did not have building department in-house.
So do we have anyone in the room who wishes to comment on the land use clearance ordinance? Do we have anyone online?
Don't see anyone in the chat box for land use clearance specifically.
Then let's give it a minute and then we'll move to the next item.
While we're waiting, can you tell me what time the meeting started? Was it 5:02?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Malia's doing triple duty tonight. Not only is she our note taker, she serves on planning and zoning, and she's like hosting the meeting and letting people in, so that raise was well deserved.
Does that mean that we don't need a town manager?
That is
not-
that is
that's
exactly. Oh.
But you have to give them better say no.
There you go.
Roll call?
It's 5:09, we will close amendments or dissolution of land use clearance ordinances and move to B, adoption of a cemetery ordinance.
Alrighty, so this would be a creation of a new ordinance. The ordinance would create a Bluff Cemetery Board under the town of Bluff's jurisdiction. It would create the position of a cemetery sexton who would be responsible for the operations of the cemetery. It would enable us to collect fees. We would still need to update our fee schedule to formally collect fees. But really it creates the operating procedures for a cemetery. It sets some general provisions, conduct, access hours, plot size, interment, conveyance, etc. It is important to note that there are many other items that a cemetery board would want to put together. This is kind of the structural foundation of putting all of this together, but the board would be responsible for many of the day-to-day duties, as well as making some other decisions specifically regarding the aesthetics and things like that of the cemetery. The current size of Bluff Cemetery, I want to be very clear. So we held a public hearing regarding cemetery a couple months back. And that specifically, you know, we're looking at different areas of land. So currently the area that we're talking about is in the northwestern section, kind of just north of the road and then north of or west of the loop that you can drive around. This is a 112 by 80 foot plot of land that has current plots that have already been sold. I'm referring to this as kind of like the more recent burial area. And it's the one that the Bluff Cemetery Board was working with most often, the Bluff Cemetery Board as run by San Juan County. We do want to recognize that there is a potential future use even to the west of this. The town's currently in the process of getting surveying done to understand what is there, using radar, GPS scan, well, no,
GPR.
thank you. To see if that would even be feasible. So that is important to note that, you know, the actual land could extend a little further. But most importantly, we want to recognize that the historic Pioneer Cemetery, as well as the area that's currently under San Juan County, which is to the south here, that is not what we're discussing in this ordinance. We're looking at this section up here. Okay. again, this ordinance would just essentially create the ability to run this this cemetery, and we would hope to transfer everything from San Juan County regarding this particular plot of land. Any other clarifying things that I?
No, I think the only important other part is that San Juan County Commission is on board with this. And so it's a matter of doing all of the paperwork, resolutions and transfer, but we really need the survey done in order to be able to be specific. So is there anyone in the room who wishes to make a public comment on the cemetery ordinance draft?
Everybody, Josh Ewing, am I supposed to say address?
Yeah, you're.
Anyway, Josh Ewing. You know, reading through all of these ordinances, as an incoming mayor, I kind of felt like I really need to like know what's happening here. And so I read all 70 pages. I will admit that this was the ordinance that I spent the least amount of time on, because I feel like I have the least like personal experience. But what really did strike me is the crazy amount of work that you all have gone to put this together. And I know particularly Mayor Lebanon and a little bit of a labor of love to make sure that this is taken care of. So mostly just want to really express thanks for the hard work on this and all of the ordinances. The one thing I will say relating to the whole suite of topics we're talking about tonight is that I don't think like the lack of people here is a necessarily indication that people don't care about these issues, but it is really hard to read that many pages and stay on top of all of these issues. And so, you know, I'll put out there the idea that I think at some point it may be helpful for us to have some sort of public open house, something a little more less formal than 3-minute, you know, say you've got a figure comment in 3 minutes and you can't ask questions, and you know, to get people familiarized with all the hard work that has gone into these ordinances. I'm not sure how many people are going to ask about the cemetery unless you know have a plot up there. But many of the other ones I think they do. So mostly I want to on this to thank everybody for the hard work, particularly, and then plant that idea of what we can do to kind of get the public familiar with these new ordinances as they're adopted.
Thank you. Well, there is no one else in the room other than the town council and planning and zoning, so we'll move to online. Anyone online on the cemetery?
No one online at this time requesting to speak on the cemetery ordinance.
Give it 1 minute. (5:16), so we'll move to C, which is adoption of recreational vehicles, parking/storage and mobile home and recreational vehicle ordinance.
Say, actually, Malia is doing 4 jobs tonight. Okay.
Marcia, would you like to read through this one?
Sure. I didn't prepare this list, but I can help you by saying that the Bluff Planning and Zoning Commission put together a recreational vehicle park and mobile home ordinance based on the ideas that we know they're here. We need to know where they can be in the town, and or both for the health and safety aspect of it, as well as the use and parks and such, so that we're ready for whatever comes. some of this was designed for, the ideas were to design for the future of RVs as possible economic housing, particularly the mobile home aspect of it. And I believe that what we've put together is pretty darn close, I guess is a way to say it. So that I hope you're reading as I'm saying this overall, and that is that the purpose was the RVs are here. We want to make sure they're in a good place and are used to help the economy of Bluff as well as be comfortable for those who come to stay. Next one. What we've done here is Malia, who is queen of our charts, has put together a chart that helps us understand the different zones that our RVs are allowed in and how many and where and how big and how little. So what we're saying is that you can have RVs in town, you can have one in your yard and use it or whatever, but you need to fit in with our setbacks, our lot sizes, and our prescribed ideas for mobile home parks and RV parks are to say that if we're going to have them, we want to make sure they don't interact, or rather impact is the right word, impact our neighbors. So once again, I hope you're kind of reading through and gone through these things. We may not be perfect, but I think we worked very hard to be as close to perfect. I'm not going to read each one of these by size and location. I know Josh is pointing out that it's a lot to read, but my take on this is that the people who have been interested have in fact followed us well throughout the process. We had some RV park owners comment for us. We've had some people ask about where they can do things with RVs. So I believe that people are in fact following things that are important to them. So in saying that, the charts reflect some of those changes that we were able to put in. One of the important things I think to note is we tried as a planning and zoning commission to stay out of the business of an RV park and stay out of the mobile home business. What we said was, please meet some basic good standards and then make your park work within those standards. So once you've met the requirements of our zone and sizing, which the chart is, then if you go further down, you'll see that you just have to meet some basic standards of what those parks can look like and where you can park RVs. I think some people will still have a question about where or what. I think some people, we need to be able to have the question of people just parking their RV. Well, that's fine overnight, but wait a minute, you can't just park in our town and stay there. So these are things. There was feedback requested. I believe this was notes that, did Amanda put these together, Malia, or did you, that just?
I actually put these together.
Okay, so what we're saying is, does the ordinance as presented clearly outline how to legally park an RV on your property? Does this ordinance present requirements and restrictions clearly, and what did we miss? So I think I was trying to say that earlier, that we had people follow us through the process and help us by noticing things, but we may not have noticed everything. So I kind of love Amanda's little direction here. If you have comments, could you please tell us what you don't see or what is confusing? I'll leave it at that and see if we get some comments and questions. I know we have one in chat.
The only other thing that I was gonna add is we know that this ordinance has gone to public hearing. Gosh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's coming back. I think, enough time has passed that we do still need feedback. It is also, as are many of our ordinances, in legal review. Unfortunately, I did not hear back by the time this started as to if our legal counsel had any additional changes to this. So at this time, we would just like to move forward with receiving more public comment. So
Thank you.
all.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. I agree with that. We said it had been a little while and we had updated some information. So I think if we can hear a few comments tonight and then get our legal interpretation, then we should be able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
All right, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to make a public comment?
Josh Ewing, I won't have time to address all my comments here, so I'll try to write up more specifics. This is one where I will provide some constructive criticism of this in hopes that it can be improved. One is that this probably isn't a problem for a lot of folks in town, but for some of us, it's a real issue of people camping on the streets of Bluff. There have been twice that I've stepped in human excrement from campers during the fire calls. There's been multiple times when people have run their generators all night when they're trying to sleep or coming home from a fire call. And the issue of camping on the streets is one I think that the town council needs to address in the future. I don't think that's what you were trying to address with this. And a simple wording change could change that. So there's some language there that 24-hour parking is allowed, anywhere on the streets of Bluff. And I would suggest that you add the words unoccupied parking, so that you don't send the message to the Overlander crew. If you know what Overlander is, you know what I'm talking about, that you're welcome to just camp in Bluff anywhere in front of anybody's house and no one can do anything about it. So that's point number one. Point number two is there's some confusing definitions around the idea of long-term versus short-term. In one place in the ordinance, it talks about long-term being more than 30 days. And in another place, it says that you can park in a driveway and occupy an RV for less than 6 months out of the year. It doesn't define what a driveway is. It doesn't say how many RVs you could have in a driveway. So, does this apply to the Bears Partnership property? Are those driveways that they're parking in, no one's paying to be there? Or at the fort, there's multiple RVs parked back there. Is that a driveway? Is that fit under the 6 month or is that the 30-day? It was really not clear to me when reading that, and I think that's where some people have concerns. And we can, we should be able to address those, but we're going to talk about what is the policy we're trying to accomplish, and then make some of those definitions more clear. And then finally, I would suggest that we make a prohibition on using generators, except in a case when there is an electrical outage. I think the idea is an RV should be plugged in. It should be in an RV park. It should be at somebody's house. It shouldn't be running all night using, keeping people awake unless there is an emergency where electricity is not available. So I think that would be an addition that would be really helpful for addressing some of the concerns that limited folks in different parts of the town have. One last thing, and I'll write some of this up, but it talks about residential C roads. I think that refers to the C streets, but I don't know that there's a difference between residential and commercial C roads that I've been able to see in ordinances. And it also doesn't say anything about D roads. So I'll write up some more of this for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online who wishes to make a public comment?
There is, we have Nicole Croft.
Thank you, Council. Yeah, my name is Nicole Croft, and I'm the Director of Operations at Bears Partnership. And my comment is around the definitions of recreational vehicle park on page 2. The plain reading of the language here does not make it clear if Bears Partnership, who has RV spots that are available for use for our volunteers and short-term staff housing. Does that, so we're not charging for those stays. Does this apply to us or does it not? And so I would just request some clarity around that so that we can be in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I don't see any other comments in the chat.
Can I make one comment? I should have included it in the introduction. the council and commission aren't able to respond to comments today. But for folks who are, individually asking about their properties, we can be in touch. But certainly, whoever's going to be working on this next, will take that kind of feedback into consideration. So, I hope that helps clarify.
So we'll give it a couple more seconds and then we'll move to E. So let's wait a minute. All right, it's 5:28. We'll move to adoption of an ordinance regulating engine brakes, also known as Jake brakes.
Righty, so this ordinance is actually pretty straightforward, and so essentially it just says, it shall be unlawful for the driver of any vehicle to use or operate an engine brake within town limits, except during an emergency situation. The purpose of putting forward an ordinance like this is to help mitigate against noise and air pollution and maintain the small town rural feel of Bluff, as what is directed in our general plan. There is a definition section. Reporting and enforcement would go to Utah Highway Patrol or San Juan County Sheriff's Office. Having an ordinance like this would allow us to contact them to help with enforcement on this. So pretty straightforward. One of the shorter ordinances, which is nice.
The only thing I would add is that this has come up from businesses and residents at each end of the town proper, where the Jake braking starts pretty quickly and continues almost to the center of the town. And when the deputies were consulted, they said they'd love to enforce it, but we don't have an ordinance that supports the signage that's already there. So is there anyone in the room that would like to make a public comment?
Josh Ewing again, confirming that Jake brakes are heard in the middle of town and it's an issue I'm glad we're addressing. The only comment here is kind of a logistical one. Toward the end of the ordinance, it talks about the locations of signs being posted at the location of where the highway crosses the town boundary. And that seems to be an impractical location for most of these signs. If you think of where the town boundaries actually are, and I'm gonna have to rewrite in my head where those are in certain cases, but not the best place to actually remind truckers to slow down. It's like not near like where they would come into town. And so maybe a simple revision to the language there, signs to be located at discretion of the mayor and town manager or, the council or something to that effect, rather than being so specific about where the signs will be located in places there. Maybe a bit wasteful and not necessary, and it'd be better to have them closer to the population center.
Is there anyone online?
No one at this time.
It is 5:31. We will move to E, adoption of vehicle idling ordinance.
Alrighty. So this one was also fairly straightforward. The drafted ordinance states no commercial vehicle shall idle within town limits for more than 2 consecutive minutes. The 2 consecutive minutes came from other similar ordinances found in other areas. Again, the purpose is to address noise, air pollution, unnecessary fuel consumption, hazardous substances idling in town. There's a definition section. There are a couple exemptions, namely traffic congestion and for like a traffic signal. So for example, if construction crews were to put up, a temporary stoplight or something, Bluff and all their stoplights. Emergency vehicles are exempt. And then there are times where vehicles are required to idle for maintenance, inspections or safety procedures. And so those are exempt as well. This one does still have that the reporting entity, and enforcement entity is the Bluff mayor. I think perhaps there might be some feedback on that. And this one proposes a penalty of $500. I know this is one of those areas that we're looking for feedback on enforcement. Don't know if the mayor will want to do this, but that's what it says right now. So open to any and all feedback. Any questions or clarifications from council?
No, this mayor's not going to enforce it. So is there anyone in the room that wishes to make a public comment?
The guy who might be enforcing this. A couple of comments. One, I'm not sure if there's a reason, public policy reason that we're limiting it to commercial vehicles. In my experience, there's an equal challenge of idling with non-commercial vehicles as commercial. Again, we see this a lot in the kind of center of town. Then there are things that are kind of gray areas of their commercial vehicles, like school buses, that often will idle for long periods of time. I don't think this is the sort of thing that we as a town would want to be aggro about in any sort of way with enforcement, but when there's an RV, a truck, a semi truck outside of a business, blocking the street and idling for long times, and there's fumes going into people's restaurants or whatever, I think that would be appropriate time to do some enforcement. I did think that 2 minutes, especially for a rural area, is a pretty tight period of time. Who's ever going to enforce after 2 minutes and 1 second? But it seemed like something a little more reasonable, like 5 minutes might be more reasonable. If someone pulls over on their cell phone, make a quick phone call, you're not doing it. So I think it's a public education and signage thing for the most part, and increasing the time period and considering expanding it beyond, because I don't know that there is a public safety or health reason to differentiate between a commercial and non-commercial vehicle. It's maybe there's something that we can't do under state law or something. I'm trying to think of reasons why we wouldn't, but I think that would be something we explore expanding beyond commercial vehicles. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone online who wishes to make a public comment?
No one at this time.
It is 5:35 p.m. We'll move to F, which is adoption of renewable energy ordinance.
All right, we're kind of in the same boat here. Does one of the planning and zoning commissioners want to walk through this one? Give a high level, since Brian's not here either, right? Yeah.
Malia, do you want it or do you want me to take it? Whatever you want.
You were a big part in this one. I think you're doing a great job.
Sorry to throw you on the spot, Martha.
Okay, let's just go through it similar to what we just did. The reason we did this is because renewable energy projects are all around us, including on the roof and the ground around many of our homes and businesses already. So it's kind of like catching up a little bit, and my favorite word, planning for what's coming. So the idea was to put in place the parameters under which you put renewable energy. And that is to say, we want it there for all of the right reasons, health and safety, etc. We want it for the economic benefits it brings, and we want to be ready for the projects coming down the road. So as we move along, one of the things that happened was Soul Smart, which is one of the agencies that presents literally smart solar information for municipalities, for government agencies, came to the rescue by saying, whatever you adopt, we can help you clear up and add to, and then you can adopt your ordinances, and we kind of help you along the way, keeping track and sort of giving you bonuses. Like we're at bronze level by doing an ordinance, but we can grow all the way through to diamond level or something by proceeding with some of these things. It is not in our foreseeable future that the town itself will be engaging in any projects, but you never know. And as we've seen, projects are happening all around us. So once again, what we've done is, with Soul Smart looking over our shoulder and answering questions for us, we put together some charts and ideas of where you can put solar projects, wind projects, geothermal projects, and I think we use the word future projects because someone is going to invent something. And what we're saying is, yes, we want you to be able to use renewable energy for your personal use. We want you to be able to use renewable energy to power things around us. And we do expect that someone will want to do renewable energy to feed the greater good all the way to the rest of Utah and beyond. So having said that, once again, our charts are probably not perfect, but they're close. And what we're saying is we want you to fit into these parameters. And if we find one that doesn't work eventually, things can always grow and change with us. Evidently, we have some feedback requested notes. So let's look at those. Does the ordinance as presented prohibit an individual from executing a safe and reasonable project on their own? Does this ordinance present requirements and restrictions clearly and effectively? Do the levels fit project sizes for our community? And what did we miss? And that's exactly what we're saying is check those charts and see if there's something that you look at and go, huh? Because that means we didn't explain it right. It's pretty fun when there are 5 of us going, huh? To each other. So if you have some comments that could fit into our needs here where we can clean up anything we missed and pass it back to the town, we'd be happy to hear from you. Any questions for clarification? Okay.
Well done being thrown on the spot. Thank you, Marcia.
So, Mr. Ewing. How about that?
As some of you may know, I do clean energy work in my day job, so this is one I had particular passion around. Super grateful for the hard work on this. I think with Soul Smart's help, we've got a really good base here. There's a couple of suggestions I would make. One of them is that solar's got a bad name for really disturbing agricultural lands and making it so you can't go back into agriculture afterwards by overscraping them. And so having some language about minimal soil disturbance is really important to protect agricultural land in the future, especially grazing, especially on our really soft sandy soils. You come in with a bulldozer and basically you can't ever farm or ranch there again. And I think it sends a good message that the town supports agriculture by protecting it in that way. Another issue is around smaller scale solar. It exempts like small lights for pathways, but there's a lot of other solar applications I really don't think we need to mess with. I think it's really overkill to regulate. Give you 2 examples. I've got a little wind station that records the wind speed at my house that has a teeny solar panel on it. But under this, I would need to get a permit to put up that little wind station. Or on my garage, I put up a 20-watt solar panel to run a little fan to take hot air out of the attic of my house. Do we need to have that be a permitted thing? Under this ordinance, it would be. So my suggestion is that you create a level under which you don't need to mess with that. One thing to consider for doing that is that HB 340 this last year passed, and it exempts solar underneath of 1,200 watts from needing to have a connection with Rocky Mountain Power. That might be a good size to say, if you're under 1,200 watts, you're gonna do plug-in solar at your house, you don't have to go get a building permit and go through that, use our limited staff time. Really think it's important that we do have the conditional use, but I would expand some of the examples there, particularly around slopes and soil types. Those are the type of things we really want to think carefully before we put solar there. And given this is our first time with conditional use, I think maybe giving more examples is probably better. And then finally, I think this is really important. In the current overlays, this would allow solar in Bears National Monument. Now, we can't allow that because we don't manage the federal lands. But if those lands were excised from Bears, then we would essentially be saying we support solar and industrialization on Bears National Monument. And so my suggestion would be is that we say we do not support industrialization or solar of anything of significant scale in the monument. And so drawing those out of where we suggest solar. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone online for this particular topic?
No one online has made a comment, but they want to make a comment.
Not having a senior moment, I'm just giving somebody 2 seconds. Want to clarify that.
Look at that.
Do you want the mic up? All right, it's 5:44, and we'll move to G, which is the adoption of general plan amendments.
Okay. So, this final one is about the general plan. So a couple reasons on why we are suggesting updates to the general plan. It is recommended that towns look at their general plan every 5-ish years anyway. So we have had a lot of changes since 2018, 2019, when this was first being put together. There are new elements that are required by the state of Utah and should be updated. Some of those are mandatory, but a lot of them are recommended. We would fall into a lower municipality class, and so they're not necessarily required for us, but it's still good to look at. So things like housing, for example. There is also strength in aligning our strategic long-term plan to our general plan, and since we went through a very extensive strategic planning process, we certainly wanted to tie that in where applicable. And it gives both documents more credibility. So what was updated, or what we're proposing to update in the general plan, as Josh noted, with this, of all of them, this is a very lengthy document. So I'm trying to break this down into the high levels. But there were some updates. Most of this is looking at, updating statistics, ensuring that the data is correct. Like I said, there's a lot that has changed since 2019. We added clarity to the introduction section and added more detail on the development process of the actual plan itself. There were some extensive edits to the zoning area under land use, as when the document was first created in order to become a town, there was no official town zoning yet. Added additional details to the unmotorized pedestrian active transportation section to really tie into the active transportation plan document. This element was required by the state to have like a transportation or transportation map, essentially. So added all of that. Also updated the municipal property and infrastructure. So now they are town buildings as opposed to, previously they were county buildings. And then also also updated the emergency services and law enforcement under community health and safety. So what was added? So we are adding a future use map, and I want to make it so clear that this is not a change to the zoning map. No changes. It's just saying in the future, the town might propose creating additional zones or changing some zones to allow for additional uses. This is a required element by the state. So this is not us just going out and creating more maps for the heck of it. It is required in our general plan that we kind of think about this. Added the Bluff Airport. It was kind of like thrown in there on the original document, so I really expanded that out under transportation. We added the housing section. Again, that is not required for a town of our size, but certainly we know that housing in any municipality needs, should maybe have some eyes on it, in the current economic state. Also added a workforce section. An agriculture section was required, so that has been added. And then water, this is definitely one that I know I want feedback on, because there wasn't much for water. So whatever's drafted in there, there's still plenty of time to get this changed. I think it's really important that collectively, the town, planning and zoning, town government, the citizens all agree on like what should be under this. Also added enforcement and implementation. They were kind of combined together, so they've been broken out to give them each more detail and more oomph. So what stayed relatively the same? It is a very long document, and if you go through the red line, there are a lot of changes, but not to say you should skip it. If there need to be changes, we should make changes while we're doing all this. Under the conservation, under land use, stayed relatively the same. Preservation of aesthetic values under land use, heritage and historic preservation section, the whole section. Under development constraints, anything to do with nature, open spaces, geology, soils, hydrology, biological features, and cultural features, all of that stayed relatively the same. So, one item that planning and zoning had worked really hard on in one of their work sessions was a future use map. I took lots of the colors and kind of created our own new future use map. One thing to note, again, this is not zoning, we're not making zoning changes. However, there are a couple areas that planning and zoning thought we could include on a future use map. That includes a riparian corridor, so all along the river bottom that's in town jurisdiction. So you'll see like a little break over here. That area by the river is not under town boundaries. I did only go up to Sand Island. I don't know if there's feedback if we want the rest of that also there. We have future use residential areas. I can zoom in a little bit too. Potential future residential areas kind of on the east side of town. They identified gathering spots. Those are the green spots there. And then red is a potential future use factory industrial zone. It's in our zoning code, but there's nothing actually zoned as factory industrial right now. So all of those and more should be brought up if the public has ideas as to where else they want to have maybe potential uses. We did just have a fairly large change to our map this past week. And so what is in black is the area that has been disconnected from the town. When planning and zoning was talking about future use, they had actually identified everything in this area as renewable energy, potential renewable energy areas, like a large scale. That was the only area they had identified as of right now. So we might want to go back in and add some additional or change the language regarding that. So that's the map. Again, very large document. We understand there was a lot of time and effort put in when it was initially drafted. I would imagine months, like hours and hours and hours. So we definitely want feedback. It would be helpful to talk through what people, want to keep, what they want to change, if they agree with some of our drafted changes. For the most part, again, it is very data or factual driven where the changes are taking place. Only in the areas where like new sections were added were future plans, the goals section was changed. I'm struggling here. But yeah, so the overarching goals and the feel of the town, we're not trying to change any of that, but it would be helpful for everyone to just kind of keep an eye on this entire document. Additional changes are still needed, so identifying that renewable energy future zoning location, as I just said, I also want to add that this map, I did not have time to outline our entire town boundary. But planning and zoning had also identified that the entire town boundary would be under a sole source aquifer protection area. Other ideas for the general plan document, I've looked at a lot of them from other municipalities. Maybe we want to add more photos, tables, graphs, charts, not sure. And then, yeah, what did we miss? And then other future suggestions for potential land use. So this is a big one. And I would, we are taking public comment up until November 7th at 5 p.m. However, based on the feedback that we get, and maybe the feedback is, this is a really big document, this is the areas that I looked at, but I'm still interested in learning more about X, Y, and Z. I want you all to look more at this. I would be very surprised if all of this just went through super quickly. So if the public does areas that they want us to spend more time on, that would be really helpful to kind of help prioritize our time. Okay, from council and planning and zoning, what did I miss in my overview?
The hours that you and Amanda. put
That's
in.
exactly what. Karen and Amanda have already put.
Smiling and table that too. No, it is a lot, and it is, I think frankly, just amazing how much has happened since the town incorporated. And I want to highlight that. I think sometimes it feels like the pace of government is very slow. But if you look at this document, there is a lot that has changed since incorporation. So kudos to the council.
I also think that Erin has posted the red line. So that was easier for me as a council member, was to kind of focus on some of, if you're wondering about changes, to really kind of narrow in on the red line. To see what changes have been made.
You were able to access it. It was not up originally. Josh, you did alert me that my link was incorrect,
Okay.
so it should be up now. Sorry, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
For those who might have.
I just thought that was easier to navigate, to see what the red line changes had been to the document than kind of trying to read one and then read the other.
Anything else?
I do think that the low to moderate income housing is coming at us. And I really think that we have to spend some time thinking about that, because every year the legislature makes a ridiculous amount of changes. And we don't want to go back and have to start this in 2 years or 3 years. I think moving forward that towns are no longer going to be exempt. It's going to be, just the reality. So. Anyone in the audience who cares to make public comment?
Yeah, this is hard, 40 pages, 3 minutes. You're gonna get a very long red line word document back. But I got my tax bill while I was reviewing this, and I saw that I paid $71 in taxes to the town of Bluff, and I'm reading this plan, I'm like getting damn good value for my $71 of taxes that I paid for the town of Bluff. Mad props to everybody who worked on this the first time around, the second time around. Looking at the red line, it was not minimal. There's a lot of really good changes. I'm going to just highlight a couple that I think are really high level things. I think in the conservation section, it's found current conditions. It really behooves us to talk a little bit about Bears National Monument, the fact that it was created, it was uncreated, it was created again, and that the town supports protecting our backyard and does not support it being smaller than it currently is. And that has a policy implication, but I think it would send a loud message to the tribes who are fighting to protect their homelands, and to the recreation and tourism economy that we were trying to protect here, that section is updated. A lot of that has happened since that first write-up. I think housing, there's a lot to think about. I think we need a working group to work on that. Figure out what the role of government is versus the role of other players. But one big missing piece I thought was a reference of accessory dwelling units and the potential that has for increasing housing stock without a crazy increase of density. Also allows, people who are full-time residents to make more income and stay in town. So it's a way to provide affordable housing. And whether our zoning and that needs to be adjusted to emphasize that, but it wasn't something that was mentioned. The water section, as I said, I think we do need some work. There's quite a bit under kind of the assumptions that aren't really assumptions. They're like, we need to research this or research that. Happy to sit down and brainstorm some there. I do think calling out, exploring, developing a secondary water system. That could also help with the agriculture section of the plan, is good. I think, one really big thing was around flooding. We do have significant flooding issues here. And one thing I was really missing was the impact of the massive mining operation expansion above town and what that means for the town when those millions of tons of gravel is removed. It's still sitting up there right now. When it's eventually removed without any reclamation plan or mitigation plan, that's a serious flood risk. And finally, the future land use map. I know it's not a zoning change, but it is something people are going to be curious about. And that is one that I kind of really do think kind of an open housey type thing. I couldn't find the map on the website anywhere. It wasn't in the appendix or the documents there. And so I don't think anybody's even got a chance to see it, to comment on it. So I do think that's tough for, public to give feedback in that format, and especially without being provided ahead of time. So I'm gonna send you along stuff and happy to sit down and brainstorm on any of these things.
Thanks, Josh. Aaron, can you remind everybody of the date that the written public comment closes?
Yes.
And what link they should use to submit it, so people aren't submitting it to the
Yes.
wrong people or the wrong place.
Yes, so since so many of these things we talked about tonight are both town council and planning and zoning issues. I'm gonna have folks submit written comment to office@townofbluffutah.gov. And the deadline is 5 p.m. on Friday, November 7th. You can also mail items, but they do need to be in our hands by that same deadline, 5 p.m. on Friday. That is 10 days from today. And that map will definitely, I know we're not supposed to respond. You're correct. That map was not up there. I will include that link right now.
Anything further on this from anyone?
No one online? Anyone online want to comment on the general plan?
So I just want to make a note that Amanda Podmore has joined us. She joined about 5:40.
My apologies.
And again, I probably don't need to repeat what other people have said, but I sat in on the first meeting with Amanda and Aaron, thinking that the amount of work that they were going to do in the deadline set was just not going to be meetable. They did it. There was a lot of work and a lot of thinking that went into it, so thank you both so much. Thanks to planning and zoning for the work that you're going to be doing. And the work that the council is going to be doing to get this. It is important that we get this general plan revised, considering that we had some good input from, was it the Hanson group on this one?
Correct. Yeah, the Hanson.
And then they did the airport overlay. So the required things, thanks to the Hanson group. Does anyone have other? Anyone online have another?
Anyone online have another?
Okay. It is 6:00 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Anyone in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. I'm turning out to the culvert.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was well done.
Thank you, Martha.
Martha.